Well, we're here in a very snowy day in the farmlands of central Illinois in Fillmore, Illinois, with Ann Frailey. Now, this website is really for aspiring writers, and Ann is certainly more than an aspiring writer, since she's written 4 books so far, 1 nonfiction and 3 novels. So I'll post a link to Ann's website later on so you can see them. But Ann, could you give us a thumbnail about your book on Tolkien, and then a bit about your trilogy?
Okay, the book on Tolkien is actually called The Road Goes Ever On, A Christian Journey Through the Lord of the Rings. And what it is it is a look at the classic Tolkien work in terms of how does Tolkien take the ethos or the mores of Christian values and reveal them through his writing. So I look at the virtues of a hero, and then I look at the vices of the nemesis, the people in the books who are the traitors or the ones who reveal themselves as the quote-unquote the bad guys. And then I take these virtues and vices and I apply them to the world that we live in today. And what are the things that lead us toward a virtuous life, toward a heroic life? And what are the things that lead us toward a vice-ridden life, a life of the poverty that you see in the characters that Tolkien outlines so carefully, so well, so brilliantly. And then I also take, at the end of the book, I look at some of our heroes that really were alive, because fiction does something to inspire us. It can do a great deal to inspire us, but even more so, we should be fed on the lives of the real heroes who have lived among us, and those would be, in our Catholic tradition, the saints. So I look at them, and I try to understand what were their characteristics and how can we emulate them. And so I do some comparison between the characters of Tolkien and the actual living heroes who may passed away, but they still live in our understanding of a life in terms of the spirit. They are still alive and still acting and still fighting for the good of the world. So I look at those and I compare them. So that would be the Road Goes Ever On. The Deliverance trilogy is my fiction books, the first of a series of fiction books. And the Deliverance trilogy starts with Aram. It's set back in the land of Ur before the actual covenant time. And so it's looking at how did God reveal himself to humanity as one God, as the God, and how did people struggle with that? And so that's what I'm looking at in those books. And then what I do is I carry the story forward from Aram into Ishtar, which is one of the characters in the Aram story, who is struggling with his father, who's a believer in a false god, and how he comes to understand the true God, having to basically deny his heritage as a believer in pagan gods. And then finally, the third book is called Neb the Great. My kids actually asked for this one because they wanted to know, how did Ishtar's father, Neb, get to be where he was? How did he get to be so bad? How did he become you could say the monster he was? And you have to look back. How did people get formed? How do they originate? What is their belief system? What drove them to what we would call madness? So those are the Deliverance trilogies.
Thank you. So this website's called The Catholic Imagination, and so we're exploring, first of all, whether there is such a thing. Is there a particular Catholic imagination, or is there just the imagination? So just from your perspective, how do you make sense of that expression?
Well, actually, I like it. I like it a lot because I once read an article, and I wish I could quote it, but it said something to the effect that Catholics tend to make people uneasy because we have an acceptance of the mystery. And the mystery being that God is not some creature or some simple nature that we can simply put in a box and define and control and keep as our pet. And the mystery of Catholicism delves deeply into the imagination. Actually, I think the imagination delves deeply into the reality of who God is. God made us in his image. And imagination comes from that very same humus, that who are we? Where do we come from? And what is it that God is revealing, not only about himself, but about all of humanity through our life experience? And the term Catholic means universal. So I think that's a rather cool reality, that we get to look at things in the largest of all possible lights, ever touching the boundaries of this mystery that we can't fully comprehend, that we're never done. We're always searching to understand more fully, who is this God we believe in? Who is this God we entrust ourselves to? And who is he revealing us to ourselves? Because we don't even fully know ourselves. We don't know each other. That's a revelation, a process. And the imagination is sometimes, as some of the greatest writers have pointed out, that the imagination is where we get to touch that mystery, where we begin to understand some of who we are and who God is in relation to us.
Thank you. So, as I begin to build a sense of what the Catholic imagination is, I started with the idea that that we love the real, we love reality, we love concrete reality, and now we're adding, well, concrete reality, or the real, goes beyond what we can grasp. That it's grounded in a mystery, the mystery of faith. So let's move on, and I really want to focus on some very practical things, and one is, like, why are you a writer? Why write?
Well, I would say, well, I have to ask myself that too. I homeschool 8 kids, and I have a lot of responsibilities. So that's the number one question I get is, why are you writing when you have so many other things to do? But the writing actually feeds my soul. And I think, in a way, kind of like a communion with God, I am searching to understand God's presence in my life and my presence in his life. And my writing allows me to explore that. So yes, I do take some time out of a very practical, important day, but at the same time, I think it feeds my day. I think it feeds my soul to be able to explore through characters. And if I couldn't do that as well if I were a nonfiction writer, for me. Now, some people probably could. But for me, I need to be able to explore the world of imagination in terms of, if I were in this situation, I make these characters come alive. They have personalities, they have pasts, they have histories, they have epics that they live in, situations that real humanity has lived in. I come from real places, real times. And then I look at that and say, how would humanity respond to that? How would a man respond to that? How would a woman respond to that? And what might their lives be? How would they change come circumstances that affect us all? War and pestilence and famine and death of a loved one. How do we respond? And so that feeds my soul, because I begin to look at the deep questions that I have to live with every day. Why am I here? What am I doing? Why does it matter that I educate my kids at home, or that I do some farming on the side, or that I believe in stewardship, or that I go to Mass? Why do I bother working so hard to do these things unless they have some important meaning? And the writing helps inform me on that.
Thank you. So my next question is how you got started as a writer. And by that, I mean something pretty specific. What kind of things did you do to go from not being a writer to being one? Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, I used to write when I was a child, and I was a terrible speller, absolutely abominable speller, and I always wished that there was a machine out there that could fix my spelling. And so, I grew up, and I loved to write, but I felt inhibited by my own lack of ability, because I felt I was a weak, I felt I was weak in the area of the punctuation, the grammar, and all of those nitpicky things that really do matter. But at the same time, I felt like I had a story. Later on, as I got older, I also realized I needed to get a job. So I went into education, because I knew that I felt a calling to be a part of children's lives. And on the basic level, to give them a place where they could feel the education was something worth learning. And I don't just mean the basic 3 hours, but I mean the love of learning history and science and math and spelling and grammar. And as I learned these things and as I worked with the kids on this, I became, enthralled with the whole message of what education says to us, that we are investigating a world together. We are investigating our lives together. So writing never really went away. It just became, you might say, submerged under the necessity of a job, a day-to-day job, and under the necessity of becoming a better educator and a better writer myself. I needed to learn some things. As I homeschooled, I really accelerated my learning, and I took a turn into a world where I saw a real lack of good writing for my kids. My kids are voracious readers. They did learn to read. They learned to read well, and they love reading. But the present books that are out there today tend to be very dark. They tend to be very despairing. And I thought, this isn't where we want to leave our kids, with this idea that there are no heroes and that we cannot become a hero, and the people who do become heroes tend to die off or get killed. So that's one reason why I like Tolkien so much. He had a more hopeful message. But I thought I'd like to try my hand again at writing. And by now I'm an adult, they do have a machine that can check your spelling for you. So I was able to, come to it as a better person, as a better writer, as a better author, and at the same time use the tools that are available to me to double check my own weaknesses and to work on those weaknesses. So it's been kind of a collaborative process of history, of time, and of self-revelation, self-understanding, and then also just the need to fill a void that I see in our society, our culture today. I love writing. I love sharing good stories, but at the same time, I'm hoping that children will love to read and to be encouraged by those stories, that there is hope, that you can overcome all the darkness the world may have to throw at us, that God is stronger than all of that, and that He has been with us through all of history and still continues to be.
Thank you. Could you talk about your writing process currently? And by that I mean, what do you do, like normally in a day, that makes you a writer? What do you do daily, weekly, monthly, that makes it possible for you to actually write books? You've done 4 already.
Well, generally speaking, I do most of my creative writing in the evening. That time, what I've actually trained my kids, they're wonderful human beings, and they actually help with the dinner preparation and they help with the cleanup process. So after dinner, we have a little early dinner. I have time from about 6 to 7:30, in which actually usually from 5 or 5:30 to 7:30, a couple hours usually, in which I can spend on creative writing. Now, right now, I'm having an editor go over my recent work, one of my recent works that I plan on putting on the Amazon contest. So she's editing this, and I will work during my writing period. And if I don't finish the batch that I have assigned for the day, I will work after all the kids are in bed, and then I'll work until 11 or whatever time I need to. Usually I can finish before 11 o'clock at night, so I can get a decent night's sleep. So I will take the time in the evenings, but my kids are my first priority. So I make sure that all the things necessary to be done get taken care of. Then the writing time comes in. So Monday through Friday, I always have usually at least a couple hours of creative writing or editing that I can do. I try to fit in what I would call the marketing aspect of writing a blog or Facebook and that kind of thing on the weekends, on say Saturday morning if I can, or occasionally I'll do a little bit of that if I have a little free time during the day. If things are quiet, I might do a little something, but not much. So the actual creative time, mostly in the evening, and mostly to give myself kind of a breather for the day, and it allows me the structure. Every single day the kids know Mom's going to sit down writing. If they need me, they know where I am. But at the same time, it gives me that habit of continuing to do this every single day. And then on Sunday, I'll usually, after Mass, I'll spend a few hours in the afternoon on Sunday writing, and that is a good catch-up time.
So, it's a truism that if you write, let's say you write 1 page a day, every day, in a year you'll have a whole book, 365 pages. So that sounds like what you're doing, just carving out a little bit of time every day and then using it.
Right.
So final question, well, actually, one more question before that. What is your editor doing for you? Like, how is she helping you out?
Well, she actually is fabulous. She's a scholar on the Roman Empire. Well, the period that I'm actually writing on is the 1st century AD. So she actually knows quite a bit about that. She studied it. So what she's doing is, one, she's editing for grammar, punctuation. I'm terrible with commas, but she's getting me over that. And she's just double checking the grammar, making sure that the sentences flow. Because as you know, when you write, you'll intend something, and then somebody else who's reading it doesn't get it, because either you've missed a word, or maybe you've missed a thought, or you haven't explained something well enough. So she'll go back and say, you need to look at this again, you need a little bit more backstory. Or she'll say, this is too wordy, take out a few words here, and she'll make suggestions. She'll put in the commas or punctuation if she thought that it would be a stronger sentence to do it a different way. So she tends to strengthen my work. A lot of times what she does is she makes it more concise. She brings it together and tightens it up a lot. And that's probably the greatest thing she does. And then she's also been a really good fact checker. If I use, say, at one point in a scene, I had a governor, and she said, no, it wouldn't have been a governor doing this, it would have been a procurator. There's a very good, helpful tool for me to say, yeah, you're right, let me double check this, and put in the right title for the right person in the scene. So she's been really good for that. Okay,
good. My final question is this. What one piece of advice would you give someone who feels the desire to become a writer?
Number one, I think, is what held me back from writing for so long was the inhibition that I wasn't good enough, or that because I lacked certain skills, that I shouldn't even attempt it. And that was actually a sorry state to be in, because you can learn skills, as I've learned, and you can become better as I have become better. My first books are not as good as my later books. I know that I'm improving with time, and I'm catching on to ideas, making sure my point of views are more focused, making sure that my language is more concise. Not just the nitpicky things of grammar and spelling, but the whole concept of how to create a fictional work that comes alive for the reader. Those are things that you learn as you write. So for a lot of writers that are held back because, say, somebody criticizes their work, or somebody says they need to go back to school and learn how to do something better, as I felt I needed to do. That shouldn't stop you from writing. Those things are true things that we should learn, and we should, as writers, always want to become better and to desire to become perfected in our work, so we can bring the best writing possible to a reader. But that is a process, and it takes time, and I think it's a lifetime skill. I don't think that it's something you should say, well, I can't do it until. It's just like holiness. If you wait until you're holy, well, you'll never get there. You got to practice. So writing is a skill that we practice over a long period of time. You live your life, and you notice it, you appreciate it, you value it, you take it, and you reflect upon it. But don't wait to write. Go ahead and start writing now.
That's great advice, I think. And to piggyback on that, let's say a young person's thinking about writing, and it may take them 5 years or 10 years to really get good. Mm-hmm. So those 5 or 10 years are going to go by, mm-hmm. whether you're writing or not. So at the end of those 5 years, would you like to have spent 5 years learning your craft?
Right.
I think that's, we all wish we knew that back when we were maybe 15 years old. Well, is there anything you'd like to add, Ann, before we sign off?
Thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Godspeed to you.